Welcome back to the History of Medicine, where we learn why it is that we do the things that we do and why things are named the way that they are named. Today, we get to learn about the history of the ventilator, starting off with the invention of the tracheostomy tube, which has been documented since 3600 BC by ancient Egyptians, where there are papyruses showing healers cutting holes into necks. There's even a legend that Alexander the Great actually saved one of his soldiers' lives who was choking by cutting a hole into his neck using his sword. Trach by sword. Then we hit the Dark Ages, where nothing really advanced in medicine until about the 1500s, when a 23-year-old anatomist named Andreas Vesalius, he published the De Humani Corporis Fabrica, where he wrote, "An opening must be made into the trachea into which a tube should be placed. You will then blow into this so that the lung may rise again and take air." That was the first description of positive pressure ventilation, and then in 1546, Antonio Brazzavola published the first successful tracheostomy tube placement for a peritonsillar abscess. Over a century later, in 1667, Robert Hooke, yes, the same scientist who invented the cell, designed an experiment where he took a dog, cut a hole into its neck as well as into its pleura, and used bellows to actually push air into the dog's lungs, showing that when he stopped the airflow, the dog collapsed, and when he started again, the dog came back to life. Not only was this the first experimental ventilator, but it also proved that artificial respiration could literally reverse death. Around that same time in the 1600s, John Mayo identified a nitroaerial spirit. It wasn't until a century after that, in 1771, that chemist Carl Wilhelm Scheele discovered oxygen by heating mercury and nitrate salts, calling it fire air. Tragically, he did die from mercury poisoning. Of note, Carl Scheele is actually nicknamed Hard Luck Scheele because he actually invented multiple different things, but other inventors kept getting credit for his inventions, such as oxygen, which is wrongly attributed to Joseph Priestley as the inventor, as he was the first to publish it in 1774. Then in the late 1800s, we started applying oxygen. In 1885, it was first documented as a life-saving treatment for pneumonia. Dr. Thomas Badeau in 1978, also called the father of respiratory therapy, then opened the Pneumatic Institute in England, using oxygen and nitrous oxide to treat asthma, heart failure, and other ailments with great success. Unfortunately, it only closed after 3 years because of a typhus outbreak. Check out these cool old nasal cannula devices. Fun fact, that one is actually a urethral canister. So, in the late 1800s to early 1920s, we discovered negative pressure, where they utilized body boxes to regulate ventilation. In 1925, Torsten Thunberg developed the barrel respirator, which encased the entire patient in a metal chamber, which unfortunately was extremely painful as it caused ruptured eardrums. Then in 1929, in response to the polio epidemic, Philip Drinker and Louis Shaw Jr. invented the iron lung. In 1952, Copenhagen had the worst polio epidemic, and Bjorn Ibsen, an anesthesiologist, realized that patients were dying from respiratory failure, not renal failure due to a severe systemic response, which was the commonly held belief at that point in time. And he pushed for tracheostomy tubes and positive pressure ventilation, which allowed mortality rates to drop from 87% to 31%. Though of note, these medical students and residents that worked with them had to handbag patients the entirety of their shift. In the 1950s, Forrest Bird, who was an aviator, developed the Bird Respirator 7, which was initially created for pilots, but it is now considered the first modern mechanical ventilator. Now, in the last 70 years since the first respirator, we've added microprocessors, AI, flow sensors, and so many other things to give us the ventilator of the day. But that is the history of the ventilator. XOXO.